Oh yeah, we are back. It is Saturday. You know what time it is. It's time for some wrestling talk. It's your boy Don Hooley, and of course the encyclopedia of wrestling, my man Mr. D Cologne. How's it going, boss?
I am doing wonderful. I cannot wait for this month of June to be over with because I'm tired of these preemptions of Dynamite and SmackDown being on the same night. It's throwing off my damn schedule. But
I kind of like it, man.
Yeah. You know what, man?
Back-to-back wrestling. Come on, man.
It's fun, but it's not fun when you have to. Here, let me fix my.
Oh, get yourself a DVR, D.
There you go, DVR. No, it's cool, but it's just I kind of want to have my wrestling on Wednesdays. There's like a void.
Got you. Yeah, I kind of miss watching wrestling on Wednesdays too, man.
Yeah, but other than that, I'm doing really good. I know this past week we've had a crazy events with a lot of these releases and everything, but we'll talk more about that when we bring in our guest.
Yeah. Speaking of guests, man, why don't you introduce our guest?
Is he here?
He's here.
Oh, yes! He is here! That is sweet. I would go into my church announcement voice that I did back in the day, but I can't do that. I cannot do that. I'm rusty. But introducing the world-renowned play-by-play announcer. You've seen him on Fox Sports. You've seen him on Triller.
Oh, yeah.
You've heard him on MLW. Need I say more? Mr. Ray Flores.
What's up, guys? How are you? Hey, thank you very much for the introduction.
Thank you. I was gonna go like you, Ray. I was gonna get but no, I had to tone it down, man. Thank you for joining us.
Oh, absolutely, guys. A pleasure here in Miami, getting ready for tomorrow's Mayweather-Logan Paul fight. So there's a lot of energy here in South Beach, and can't wait. Just got here a few hours ago, and away we go tomorrow.
Ooh, man. So we're gonna make this interview and show pretty short because we know it's 8 o'clock over there.
It's all good.
You're busy. You're a busy man.
So we're gonna get to the point and everything. So with the Mayweather Paul fight and everything, with the Triller and everything, one of the big things I wanted to ask you was the way Triller presented their event. Do you see that slowly coming into professional wrestling?
Do I see that? I don't know, because with the WWE, they're a publicly traded company, and you can't be making waves like that when you're a publicly traded company. You have a board of directors and everything. That's difficult. Now, AEW, maybe, but I even think that they're kind of traditional, and I can't see them totally going off the rails and doing something so out of the box that it kind of derives away from the tradition of what we kind of see a little bit in AEW, if that makes any sense. I think it would have to be like an ROH thing, or maybe even a Japanese company that has some English commentary. But the traditional, the big boys here in the United States, even MLW. I mean, MLW has its own unique style, but they're not just going to go out of left field for no reason. They have a method to what works and what they're doing, and the formula is paying off. So I think it would have to be ROH or maybe a small indie company, and then you look over in Japan, and Japan's willing to experiment in a variety of different ways. So, you could see it happening over there.
They do anything.
Okay. Yeah, because I saw the event and everything, and I was like, whoa, this is different from boxing. I was telling Julio, I was like, hey, it was like a concert with boxing matches in between. It was lit.
When I was telling D too, I don't know if you agree with me or not, but nowadays, with boxing, it's a little more, it's different. The crowd there is different, because we're so used to old school boxing. De La Hoya, Julio Cesar Chavez, and nowadays it's more like entertainment, like kind of WWE, AEW style.
Yeah, well, the thing is, it's different, right? So what I mean by that is, you have these different layers to the boxing business now that are starting to develop, and you have your traditional pound for pound great fights. I mean, we have a really good schedule. I mean, not a good schedule, we have a great schedule. July 24th, Wilder Fury #3. I can't wait for that. August 21st, you got Pacquiao, Errol Spence. SummerSlam happens to be happening in the same city now that I found out earlier today, but we'll talk about that a little bit later. But we're seeing the traditional boxing and the big fights will still draw a lot of attention. But now we're seeing these entertainers get into the world of boxing, and the Paul brothers are spearheading that movement, and it's been successful. And I don't have a problem with it, guys, because here's the thing. A lot of the undercard fighters are going to get the rub because of the fact that they have these guys headlining. So they have 20, 30 million followers, et cetera, et cetera. People in entertainment want to see these guys fight and these entertainers compete. But in the process, when you watch these shows, you're going to see a Regis Prograis who fought at the co-main event against Ivan Redkach before Jake Paul fought Ben Askren. You're going to see a Badu Jack when he fights tomorrow night in a separate matchup before Floyd Mayweather fights Logan Paul. I have no problem with it as long as the guys in the co-main event, the opening pay-per-view fights, are able to get the rub and get their shine on for that very reason because of who's headlining. It's no different than if you go back to WCW, right? When Hulk Hogan was main eventing and stuff, but you would also see, the Eddie Guerreros of the world and the Luchadors, and you'd see all these unique styles and new, talent that you're like, oh, wow, like I didn't know he was that good, but you were there because of the main event, but you also got exposed to all this other talent.
Very well said.
Yes. I totally agree with that. I know with the Triller fight, I think there was a few undercard matches on that event and everything.
Yeah, 3 undercard fights.
And a lot of those guys got huge publicity from that because it was like, I forgot who was the act before them, but the music act, and they're like, oh, this guy's fighting. Like, oh, man, who's this guy? And
we had people on before the main event. Justin Bieber was performing before the main event.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
I'm sitting there with Scoop, and we're like, Bieber's getting ready to perform, and I'm like, I just threw it to a Justin Bieber concert. Like, unbelievable. And now we got Jake Paul fighting coming out with a robot. I mean, are you serious?
That's
great.
Awesome.
They all bring in their crowds, their different crowds, too, which is awesome, man.
It's great. You know what? I love it for the sport. I have no problem with it because more people are talking about combat sports than ever before. And I love it, and I think it's healthy, and I think it's wonderful for all of us involved. I mean, you guys, doing your show and members of the media, commentators like myself, fighters, trainers, cornermen, cities are getting all these big events. I mean, it's awesome.
Yeah, I think I posted yesterday because I think the first time I met you, Ray, was at the Pro Wrestling Blitz press conference 2014 at Sport Circle.
Oh, I remember that. I got slapped.
Oh man, I remember that. And
that was brutal.
I had to think about it because I'm looking at all the stuff that's happening in professional wrestling now and just how it's on the precipice of like exploding again. Yeah. And I'm like, man, would it be so awesome to have a restaurant like that in Chicago right now with all this publicity? Like, I'm like, please, somebody create a wrestling restaurant so we can have something because it's too much.
I'm surprised like Pro Wrestling Tees hasn't done something like that.
Yeah.
That's a good idea. Yeah, you're right. I mean, who knows? They might. I mean, especially now with things opening up because COVID hopefully now is behind us. I mean, I think that there's definitely room for it, especially with wrestling being on how many nights, guys? I mean, it's like 4 or 5 nights a week.
Yeah,
5 nights. It's awesome. Okay, so it's 5 nights a week and approximately 32 hours.
That's insane. 32 hours. Like I remember when all we had was like a Monday show, and then we expanded, 2 nights, and we thought that we were getting off. We're like, oh my God, 2 nights of wrestling. Now 5 nights? Unreal.
Yeah, 5 nights and I think 7 promotions.
Wow, that's awesome, man. I mean, I love it.
Crazy.
It's wonderful. I mean, it keeps you guys busy.
Well, it doesn't keep Julio busy. It keeps me busy, which in some way has contributed to me developing somewhat carpal tunnel because I'm tweeting and I'm putting the flyers. And Julio knows this. I'm like icing my hand, and he's like, "Hey, you're gonna do a review." I'm like, "Dude, I'm trying to rest my hand. I'll just watch it."
You have slowed down, man.
Yeah, I do. I do have to slow down. So another question.
Man.
Yeah. So another question I have, Ray, is with the state of professional wrestling, and I'm so glad that you're on MLW. Since your first appearance, I can tell the presentation has done a 180. Before that, just my perspective, it wasn't anything distant or anything. It didn't connect with me. There were like gaps as far as the transition from the matches to the backstage. It was just, it didn't correlate or anything. But when you came, it's like there was a fluidity. I'm like, man, this is okay. This is okay. Let me get here. So what led to you joining MLW?
So, I mean, first and foremost, Court Bauer is the guy who brought me on. I mean, I've known Court mean, I've been around this business for a while, guys. I'm like, man, I've been around, a good amount. When I'm like looking back, I'm like, I've met you. I've known you for 10 years. I've known you for 8 and 9. It's like, man, time flies. But Court and I have known each other. I worked Combate Americas when Combate Americas first started. Like, this is before their UFC Fight Pass deal. And we were on like Univision. We did one show, and then Court got brought on to help out with the creative and from the behind the scenes stuff. Campbell McLaren brought him in. And I was the play-by-play guy for them in English. And Court and I just started talking. And we developed a really good friendship. And we kept in contact. And I went down to Dallas for like WrestleMania, 32 in 2016. Okay. And he was like, MLW radio was blowing up. And he had an event on a Thursday. So I flew down there early, hung out with him and talked a little bit. And we kept in contact for the most part. And then MLW came on for a promotion and stuff like that. And they did a show in Chicago, their first show in Chicago in, I think, November of 2018. And I happened to be I moved to LA in September of that year. I'm back in Chicago now. But anyways, they asked me, they were like, hey, would you be able to be the ring announcer for our Chicago debut? And I was honored. I'm like, absolutely, man. Like, are you kidding me? So I walked out. And I knew it was going to be big, right? I knew it was going to be a big show. But when I walked out to start, introducing people and getting the crowd revved up, and that place was sold out, and it was the biggest crowd that MLW had up until that point. And I've been to Cicero Stadium many times I've done many boxing events there, MMA events, et cetera, et cetera. But when I walked out and I saw every seat in the house packed, people on the floor, this crazy energy, I'm like, damn, like it was almost one of the best moments of my career. And I'll tell you why. Because the fact that I was coming home to Chicago, I'm being involved in something that I love, because I love professional wrestling, sports entertainment, but it is professional wrestling. I love it. And to feel that crowd and to be able to get them revved up and started for the night, and knowing that we were going to see something special, man, that kind of adrenaline, that's hard to freaking it's hard to be normal after that when you feel that energy. And the talent that we saw that night was unbelievable. And then a couple years later, I'm talking to Court, and I'm like, hey, if there's ever an opportunity, I'd love to be able to work with you. The opportunity presented itself in February. We started talking in February. And also, I think they liked the fact that I did Big Ten wrestling. So I'm with the Big Ten work, and I did Big Ten wrestling this season. And as a play-by-play man, and then I was a reporter for the Big Ten championships. I think they liked that. And it actually helped me out with my wrestling calling, because there are similarities to certain things from amateur wrestling to professional wrestling. Some fundamentals are there, especially in certain guys' styles. So, we came on, they wanted me to try out where I did a Never Say Never, which was awesome. And then, I've been with them ever since, and, certainly hope that, we continue this partnership.
That's amazing, man. So before we go on with the show, man, what advice would you give someone like me and Deidre that's trying to get in the professional wrestling industry?
I would just say, man, honestly, keep doing what you're doing, but also hit up every not small, because small is a bad word, every independent promotion out there that you can find, because shows are starting to happen again. And even if you're like, hey, can I call a match or two, or whatever the case may be, get out and do it. Because the thing is that all this stuff, it's like being a fighter. It's like muscle memory. And the same thing when it comes to, I'm all about repetition and putting in the time. What do they say? It takes 10,000 hours to master something. That's the same thing. How are you going to get better? How are you going to expand and know what works, what doesn't work, what you like, how your pacing is? Should I have gotten out of this instead of that? How do I lead into something? Why do I lead into this? You get better based on working and practicing it and doing it on a consistent basis. If I only have 2 shows, and this doesn't happen, knock on wood, but if I only have 2 shows a month, or 2 shows in a month, I'm like, man, what the heck am I going to do? I'm so used to doing at least 3, sometimes 4 or 5, if not more shows a month. And you get into a rhythm, and you're just like, it becomes second nature to you, but also you just get in such a flow, and your focus is ridiculous. So when we're in the middle of a run, right, and I'm doing, 7 shows in 8 weeks, that 3rd, 4th week, I'm so locked into what I'm doing, because my focus, my concentration level gets higher and higher as we get into this, schedule. So I would just say the more you do, the better. I mean, if you could do 2 shows in one day, by all means. Like if a promoter has a show at noon and then you got one at 7 o'clock, do it. Do a double shot. Do as many as you can, as long as you're not putting yourself to where you may make the show, may not make the show. I'm not saying to do that, but just as much as you can, because that's how you get better, and that's how we, evolve and improve, and the audience benefits from it because they see how hard you're working and the development.
That's awesome, man.
Ooh, nice. I love these gyms. Man, we have this recorded, and man, I can go back and watch this. This is dope. A question I have for you, Ray. How was the transition from when the pandemic started? Like, how did you go from just all these events to it just stopped? Like, how did it, like, okay, I got to change some things. Like, how did you adjust to it?
Bro, it was horrible. Like, I mean, I adjusted in the sense that, I mean, you guys have been, I don't know, like you guys have doing it. We're all doing it. But doing things at home to be able to get information. So just because we couldn't go into the studio doesn't mean that we should stop. So I gave it a week or two. And then I'm like, okay, like, what is this? Like, this is not going away anytime soon. So I'm like, we've got to be able to adapt. So I got a hold of the guy at the PBC website, Ryan Hafey, who does a marvelous job. And I asked him, I'm like, how about we do something that we can interview fighters or just keep the brand out there? And I think everybody had to adjust because, sports were shut down for 4 or 5 months. Yeah. So that's why we started Time Out, and I do it every single week on the PBC Instagram live page, where I interview a fighter, a trainer, a promoter that's involved in the world of PBC. And we just have a 20 to 30 minute conversation. After that, I open up the questions and comments, from the social media and from fans all over the world. And we have a discussion. So I had to adjust, and I literally did it off my phone. I mean, I do this off my phone in my place, and you got to be able to adapt. I mean, I had Deontay Wilder on this past week and stuff like that. So, but it was like, you have to be able to adjust. But guys, I was like borderline depressed because I was used to traveling and flying 100,000 miles a year. We just got done with Wilder Fury #2 in Las Vegas, feeling that energy, that buzz. The week before that was Caleb Plant's homecoming in Nashville, over 10,000 people. When you go from that schedule and bouncing around and doing, media press tours and media workouts with fighters and stuff, and then it's like sit on your ass for 4 months. Yeah. It's like, what do you do with yourself? I mean, I could not do anything. It was sad. It sucked. Thankfully, that's behind us, because it's like once you get there, you don't ever want to go back there again.
Yeah, it takes a toll. I know me personally, I went from driving Lyft. I do social media consulting, so I'm managing 15, 18 accounts. So I went from doing that to just being at home, and then, the issues that happened with my dad and his health and everything. So I'm like, man, this is, I can relate to it, right? Because I'm like, man, what am I going to do? And I was like, you know what? Let me start reviewing wrestling. And one thing led to another. I started posting it, and then Julio's like, hey, you want to join the show? Sweet. Yeah. So I wound up having a gig because of it. So it's like, all right,
well, I think it was good and bad for all of us. Same with me, because I had a chance to like reconnect with my family. I got a chance to reconnect with myself. Because a lot of times you spend your time working 8-9 hours a day, and that's all you do. That's life. Until you actually start learning more about yourself. And for me and Deidre, we've always talked about wrestling. ICB, we were talking about wrestling. So this show right here, this is something we've had planned out for years, and we had just brought it to life this year, so which is awesome. But Ray, I know you're a busy man.
Yeah, no, I got time, guys. I mean, I went out. I got time, so we can go as long as you want.
Cool. Okay. Let's talk MLW for a little bit, man.
Yeah.
Yes, we have to.
Live events.
Yeah. July 10th. I can't wait, guys. Philadelphia.
Okay, so you're gonna be there, right?
Yeah, I mean that's the plan. I mean, here's what I will tell you is that, I have plans to be there, yes, but in this crazy world of the boxing business and I just have different clients that I have to make sure everyone's good. You know what I mean?
Okay.
Yeah. That is the plan for me to be there, though, on July 10th.
Okay. Yeah, because when this was announced, I think MLW was one of the first to announce. Julio, you can take the graphic down. I believe they were one of the first organizations to announce that they were going to have an event with fans. and I think AEW followed. Then I think Ring of Honor, Impact, and I think WWE's the last one that did, but that's a whole nother issue with them. Oh God! So, with everything happening in MLW, and of course lately there's been a bunch of releases that have been crazy with the WWE. Like, is this like a video game where you're like, I released like, did somebody like what? What do you? I'm not gonna. I don't know your contract situation, so I don't want to disrupt that or anything. But do you see a few? I don't want to say major players or anything like that, but definitely, do you see people going to MLW with all the movement that they're doing as far as Vice TV on Saturdays?
Yeah, of course.
The moves they're making. Do you see that as another viable option amongst that whole territory circle?
I think absolutely, because here's the bottom line. And what MLW is doing is very different and unique compared to everybody else. I mean, they don't try to be the WWE. They don't try to be AEW. They don't try to be really hardcore specific for the internet wrestling community. It's like this hybrid. And the bottom line is the fact that you have a guy in Court Bauer who knows what he wants. And he has a vision. I mean, I'll be honest, guys. I learn, and this is no bullshit. I mean, am I allowed to curse on this thing?
Yes.
Yeah, okay,
go ahead. I do it. Go ahead. You're good.
Yeah, but no bullshit. Like, when I sit and I talk with Court about, the layout of a show and the vision that he has, I get so much better as a play-by-play man and being involved in professional wrestling because Court is just brilliant. Like, you know how guys talk about, Paul Heyman, and people talk about, back in the day, Pat Patterson being a Finnish guy and Dusty being, what he was, God rest his soul. Court is along those lines because Court came from the Dusty Tree. And when I'm talking to Court, I'm learning underneath him and hearing what, like, okay, like, let's make sure we hit this, and just letting him educate me on the knowledge of professional wrestling. It blows my mind. On top of that, I work with St. Laurent, who is unbelievable. Like, guys, I work with a lot of people in combat sports as an analyst, and he is so good. I mean, I'm like, man, this guy is on fire all the time. There's not a point where I throw him the ball, because a play-by-play man, in my estimation, is like a quarterback. You're the one to distribute the ball and make sure to put the ball in your playmaker's hands. And for me, I'm quick in and out. 1, 2, 3 step out, boom. There we go. That's my job, is to tee up my analyst, tee up the fighter. That's who's going to provide the context and add more of the depth and the substance to what you're watching. My job is to set it up, and then I toss it out. But St. Laurent gets the ball, and he runs with it. He always catches it in stride. He's just so good. And we have a wonderful chemistry together, because I hear him, I hear things that he says and different motives that he has and stuff like that. And then, we just go ahead and we click. We have a lot of chemistry.
Yeah, it definitely shows, because, like I said, from the time you first joined, your first appearance on MLW, to before, I was like, it's night and day. Like, it's a fluidity. As Mark Henry said yesterday on AEW Dynamite, tightening the screws. It's like, okay, I can watch this. Like, you have to watch this. No, you have to watch this. My other question, I'm trying to think. Okay, Jimmy Smith, he just joined the Raw announce team and everything. Did you get a chance to catch Monday?
I didn't catch it on Monday. I was watching. I'll be honest, guys. I've been watching the NBA playoffs.
Who does?
Same here.
Aside from prepping and getting ready for this weekend, I was watching. The NBA playoffs have been unbelievable.
Yes.
It was funny before I jumped on. I know you're talking about how you want, the AEW to be back on Wednesdays, but for me, that NBA schedule, man, has been unbelievable. Watching these games and the new talent, it's just like unbelievable. Like, it blows my mind. But anyways, I didn't get an opportunity to watch it on Monday, but I heard he did a very good job.
It is, well, with the rap that Monday Night Raw has lately, that it's very, it's an acquired taste to watch it. Like, it's, man, creatively it's like that. But in spite of all the, as us as fans can see, there's just creative flaws and inconsistencies and stuff like that. He really he was an anchor on that show as compared to Adnan Virk, who, he just didn't fit. It wasn't his element as far as the MLB Network. It just didn't, watching wrestling as a fan, there's a verbiage that you use to tell the story and stuff like that. And
it's also a pacing thing too. It's a pacing thing. It's like it's really hard. And this is no knock on anybody. I'm not knocking Adnan. I'm not knocking anybody that tries this. What I'm saying is that it's hard to jump in from being a general sportscaster, from a different whatever entity it is that you're at, and then jump in the world of professional wrestling. Because the bottom line is this, guys. It is like something you've never experienced before. There's so many different elements. It's not traditional. It's so loose. Like everyone's like, oh, it's traditional pro wrestling. No, it's not. Because when you're in the business and you're on the air and you're from a creative standpoint, from a production standpoint, the way that shows are run are so different compared to anything else that you're going to do, whether it be soccer, whether it be football, whether it be boxing, everything. I was fortunate because I came up through the independent circle with Pro Wrestling Blitz when they existed in the Chicagoland area. I started off as a ring announcer with them on 1 or 2 shows, and then Tony Scarpone asked me, hey, do you want to be, a manager? I'm like, a manager? What are you talking about? And he's like, yeah. And I'm like, absolutely, 100%. Yeah. And he brought me on, and I was working with guys like Matty Starr and Vic Capri and, Nick Brubaker, guys that are phenomenal on the, independent circuit and stuff like that. Will Moe, another guy. And they were like, okay, we want you to go out and start cutting promos. And then from cutting promos to getting involved in matches little by little. From that, it was then like, okay, now you're going to take a bump or two, this and that. So, I got hit over the back with a crutch. Like, I got thrown outside of the ring, messed up my tailbone, but that's all right.
I'll do it.
I got DDT'd. I mean, and all those things, I was probably super stiff, you know what I mean? Because now, I wasn't ready for that, but they protected me and I was fine. But I learned a lot from the business. So I learned what it was like to be in the backstage locker room and see the way that the culture is when it comes to professional wrestling. I learned it from the grassroots coming upwards. And when I got into more boxing and I started getting into more things, amateur wrestling even, all of that together allows me to jump into, the chair with an MLW and, have not so much of a learning curve. I mean, there's still a big learning curve I have to deal with because you have to deal with the pacing, the timing, the flow of the show, what's important, what's not important. It's very storyline driven. Whereas when it comes to the other things I do, it's very much cut and dry. A, B, C, A leads to B, leads to C, leads to D, et cetera, et cetera. Pro wrestling's not like that. Pro wrestling, you go from A to W, you go from W, you go from P to B. Things are changing, things are moving, and you got to be able to adapt. And you know what? I love it because, man, when I'm on that headset for those few hours and I'm working MLW, I am in such a different world and I'm on a different planet because I'm so locked in with what's going on and I'm in tune with what St. Laurent's doing. I'm in tune with my producers doing. I'm watching the action in front of me, making sure that that's correct. I mean, there's so many different things, but I'm so thankful that I got an opportunity to learn from the independent circle first, or the independent circuit, and then transition because MLW is one of the best in the world. And I think they're only going to continue to grow and get better.
So do we.
Yes. So another question I have, with like I mentioned earlier, the territory that we see forming with New Japan, AEW, Impact Wrestling, NWA, you can kind of throw Ring of Honor because they work with New Japan, and you could throw MLW because they have guys that, go to New Japan and everything. What do you think about the cross promotion and the the partnerships with the wrestling companies? It's something we haven't seen in 40 years.
I think it's great, but I'm like, is this real? Like,
we say that all the time.
Real? Like, I'm seeing the AEW champion at Impact. I'm seeing the Impact champion, the AEW champion with AAA. I mean, I'm seeing all this cross promotion. I'm hearing the WWE's talking to New Japan. I'm like, what is going on in the world, guys? Like, it's just like, it's like pro wrestling is drunk, but in a good way. Like, it's got a nice buzz. You know what I mean? Like, you're out having fun with your buddies and you've had a couple of drinks and you're feeling great. That's what it's like. I mean, I'm like, I can't believe that all this is happening. I think it's great because it brings more creative minds together. It brings people from different styles and different companies into these different territories, quote unquote. And the thing is that when you get into any specific platform, network, wrestling promotion, you get into a groove and then you get comfortable. Not all people, but it's easy to get comfortable. And you're like, I know what to expect. I know what the flow is. People say, this is the WWE style.
Yeah.
Well, how about now if you're a WWE guy and then you move yourself and you're going to New Japan and now you have to deal with the strong style. I mean, how crazy is that going to be? You have to be on your game because you have to bring your best. You got to learn a new locker room, new verbiage, everything. I think it's wonderful, guys.
Yeah, awesome. We're advocates for it because, like I was telling Julio, I just turned 39, so I've been watching wrestling for 37 years. I was telling them earlier 39? In the mid 80s, you had, NWA, you had AWA, you had World Class, you had WWF, you had New Japan. So you had all those companies, but then once WWE started growing, nationally, they kind of just withered away. So it kind of takes me back to when I was a kid, where you were exposed to all these companies. I'm like, ooh, this is 5 nights a week of different wrestling. Man, and it's funny because I looked at my dad and I'm like, man, you better be thankful I'm not a kid now, because I would not leave my room. Cable, internet, 5 companies, video games. I am not leaving my room.
Seriously, I mean, even when we had 2 companies growing up, I mean, I'm 34, going to be 35 this year, but it was like I had such a blast going back and forth, and even on Saturdays and Sundays when they had like, what was it, like the main event and the Power Hour and WCW Saturday Night and Livewire, all that stuff. I'd absorb as much as I could because I couldn't get enough of the product. Now, I mean, I don't think it's oversaturation, but I mean, you want your fair share of pro wrestling. You want to get, full of it. Well, you have every opportunity to do so in the marketplace right now.
Especially right
now. were you one of those kids? I know I was, where you were flipping, like literally if you had a remote, you were flipping Nitro Raw, or you had the box, the cable box, and you're
the black box.
Because if it was something that didn't interest me on either whatever, I would flip and like, all right, let me see what's going on over here. Or I mean, even bro, like kids they don't realize how, I mean, kind of sound old man now, which I don't want to be like that. But it's like, they don't realize that you have your computer. You can stream now from your computer and then watch, TV. So you can watch multiple, shows at once and not miss a single minute of anything significant. Whereas back in the day, if something was in commercial break on Raw, I'd flip over to Nitro and see what's going on Nitro. And then when Nitro has a break, I flip over to Raw, and I'm going back and what was it? I don't even know if they exist anymore on remote controls on TV. But remember the jump button or the back?
Yes.
I had both of them locked in to USA and TNT, and I'd be going back and forth. I wouldn't change it. I just had that one button, and it'd be like boom, 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 boom. Here we go, man, because that's how much I enjoyed it. And I mean, I was so locked in. I mean, especially in those glory days, and hopefully, we get back to these companies really pushing each other. I think AEW is starting to do that with the WWE. I know that MLW is pushing everybody because I see a little bit of similarities, little things in the WWEs of the world, the AEWs of the world, and it's great to see all these influences that are paying off, and the industry is only continuing to grow and get better. And I think right now we're in a transitional phase with how the business is going. And who knows, guys? I mean, with all the releases that's happened with the WWE, I mean, I have a gut feeling that maybe they will be sold, and that would be unreal.
We were just talking about that.
I mean, can you imagine? Like, I don't know what life would be like in professional wrestling without Vince McMahon being the owner of the WWE. It's like, how could this even happen? Like, I don't know. It would almost be like a part of my childhood will have died in that sale, if that makes any sense for what Vince has done for the business.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you about that because I know you have experience in the corporate world and that as in sports corporate world, you know, with everything that WWE's done as far as the business side, does it look like they're not necessarily going to sell this year or the next 3 years, but are they preparing to be sold?
I think maybe, guys. And you know what? They have the move that they made to go out and get Nick Hahn and bring him on, I believe, as he's the COO of the company, right?
Yeah, him and there's another lady because there were two CEOs that they got rid of, and Nick Hahn and another individual took their place. Yeah,
so Nick Hahn's the COO. Nick Hahn was the man at CAA. And as we all know, that is one of the most, if not the most influential talent agency in the world. What he did there was unbelievable. And when WWE lured him away from CAA, I was like, oh my gosh, like this is a big move. Because Nick Hahn is a mover and a shaker. The guy is brilliant. I think without a doubt, Nick Hahn is probably, and you guys can put this out, tweet this, put it on Facebook.
We definitely will.
To say. Nick Hahn, I think, is one of the most brilliant, most savvy, most charismatic people when it comes to the business aspect of combat sports. That's boxing, that's MMA, that is professional wrestling. Nick Hahn has that kind of influence, and he's that damn good. For Vince to go ahead and say, here we go, I want you on, and here are the keys to the kingdom, do what you do best. I was like, oh my gosh, like, man, and Nick is only making the WWE product better. I know fans are upset by the releases and stuff like that, but with Nick Hahn being there and Vince still being there, and you know, there's still the infrastructure of WWE is still there and present. I think that WWE is in very good hands, and I think we're going to see this transitional phase, and I'm curious to see what is to come over the next 6 months with them.
Yeah, I know Brandon Thurston from WrestleNomics, he tweeted out, I think it was that Wednesday, that 78 out of the 300 wrestlers wrestled the week before. So they have at least 300 wrestlers. So what I'm hearing is that what they're trying to do is cut the roster in half, because if you remember 2-3 years ago, they were just hoarding talent because they didn't want nobody to go to AEW, Impact, Ring of Honor, New Japan. And now it's come back to kind of bite them where, like, hey, you need to get rid of these guys. Like, they're talented, let them go elsewhere. You know, if they're big, we bring them in. If not, just let them, you know, go elsewhere.
Well, and then also, too, who's to say that they can't come back? Because, you know, it's great for the industry, because if a guy isn't, I mean, there's only so many hours that they have on television, and there's so many, you know, amazing performers on that roster that if you can go from being an opening match person, but you feel like you have the ability to main event, and you can go to another wrestling organization, promotion, and main event and show, be like, hey, look, like, there's a reason why you guys signed me, but now I'm a main eventer, and I'm going to come out better from it. I mean, look at Drew McIntyre, for instance, guys. When he got released, and he worked on his body, he worked on everything, and now the guy is right there at the, you know, he's at the top of the pecking order. So it's okay for these guys to leave, and I think they're going to become even bigger stars. I mean, obviously Jericho proved that, but he was its own entity, and that's, you know, what he's been able to do is remarkable. But I think the Strowmans of the world, I think Andrade's, I think those guys are really going to show, and we're going to start to see over the next few months, can they be main event players? And when they get to that main event slot, how are they going to perform? Are they going to be able to draw big money? I believe in all the guys, and I wish them nothing but the best.
Yeah, I was telling Deidre before the show started, you know, with all these let goes, I think these guys would be okay. For the guys that got let go, I think they're going to be in good hands. You know, there's a lot of companies out there. There's actually Impact Wrestling is one of those companies that can use one of these big names.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's going to bolster the industry as a whole, because you get to see these guys these guys and girls in different matches stylistically. So you can get, you know, a Braun Strowman that to go into a, you know, what if you were to go to MLW and match up against like a Mats Kruger or someone like that? I mean,
Jacob Fatu.
Put him in the draft. Put him in the draft.
Can you imagine that? I mean, it'd be unreal. Like, I mean, just stylistically. And then I think that with this being new and being fresh, it livens up guys and girls because they're being introduced to a whole new audience. And you want to bring it. And you also, as you guys know in pro wrestling, you want to get the respect from the boys and the girls in the back. So you're not going to come here as a former WWE, performer and say, okay, that I'm going to rest on my laurels. No, you can't do that. You have to show why you were at the dance. And you got to prove that there's a reason why people are talking about you being that damn good. So that's what I'm excited about, guys. And then it's going to push their opponent in the ring even more so. So everybody wins in this instance.
Exactly. Let's get back to MLW, man. The draft is here. So let's talk about the draft.
Look, Davey Richards, #1 pick. Are you kidding me? I mean, I'm like, oh my gosh. Davey,
that shocked me.
Oh man, I mean, talk about being different and really making a splash. I like what they've been able to do so far, guys. And honestly, I have no idea who's going to be drafted next, and I'm waiting just like you guys. I mean,
who would you like to see in the draft?
What's up?
Who would you like to see in the draft?
Who would I like to see in the draft? Like I said, I mean, Strowman to me is very appealing to me, and then also. Who was it? I mean, just goes to show you how much, who was it? Buddy Murphy's another guy who I think can really go and's got a gas tank. And I think he really, when he got pushed in WWE, I thought he excelled well. And I mean, some of the matches that he can maybe have, I mean, I'm thinking about, our middleweight champion and maybe, I mean, I know that a little bit of a size disparity, but how about Myron Reed and Buddy Murphy? You know what I mean?
Dream match. Dream match.
Can you imagine that, guys? Like Buddy Murphy and Myron Reed for the AEW, or not the AEW, MLW,
There's so many of them. We're getting
it's crazy. But can you imagine, that match for the MLW Middleweight Championship? Can you imagine Braun Strowman in there against, Jacob Fatu or Calvin Tankman? I mean, man, the possibilities, guys, no bullshit, are endless.
Yes. Now, another question I have for you is, with everything coming back and crowds coming back, do you see another all-in happening? Because now you got a legit #2 in AEW, and they're getting everyone else together. Do you legit see an all-in 2 happening?
You mean another pay-per-view with them?
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, aren't they doing it in Chicago in September?
They're doing All Out. All In was with Ring of Honor, Impact, New Japan, and
okay.
Something like that.
I see what you're saying. Okay, so bring everybody together under one roof and have a show.
Like a super card.
I think what you can do, guys, I think that the market is getting big enough to where if they're smart, and this is just me speculating here, right, guys? I mean, we're just, as friends sitting back and speculating. I think you can get, with the right people involved, you can do a smaller stadium and do a stadium show. Not, football stadium, 70, 80,000. But if you do those MLS stadiums, 30, 40,000, I think that's a nice number that if everybody gets together and says, let's plan our years around this hallmark date. And this is what's going to happen every single year. And you have an agreement of 5 years between all those that want to be involved. So if MLW wants to be involved, if AEW wants to be involved, if Impact, if AAA and New Japan Pro Wrestling, you do that. And then you make a weekend around it to where you have a fan fest. It's like the Super Bowl of everybody else besides WWE, if that makes any sense. So an alternative Super Bowl to what we already get with WrestleMania weekend, I think you can start off and probably do 30 to 40,000. And as it gains steam, because I don't think you should start and try to grow too fast, grow in the right way. So to me, I'm thinking about a stadium. I'm thinking if you were to do Dignity Health Sports Park, I was there last week for Nonito Donaire and Nordino Bali, and that's where the LA Galaxy play. If you were to do Dignity Health Sports Park in Los Angeles, I think that place fits about 30,000 people. Probably if you put seats on the pitch and on the field, you could probably do another 10,000. You do 40,000 people, at Dignity Health Sports Park in Los Angeles and have a target date and make sure that everyone's on the same page and all the companies send their top guys and you get some of these dream match scenarios, I think you can do a sellout crowd of about 40,000 people and everything else. So I think it would be spectacular.
Yeah, 40,000. Yeah, 40,000. Yeah, 40,000 visually looks like 80,000.
Yeah, I mean,
if you do it right.
Mm-hmm. And then too, like you look at it this way, because I think in economic standpoint with a lot of stuff, guys. So you have to bear with me. If you got 4 or 5 different promotions, at that point, you're like, okay, every promotion's in charge of selling 10,000 tickets to this big event. So you know what I mean? You kind of divide it that way to where not one company is shouldering the majority of the workload, and everybody's promoting it on their TV. You know what I mean? Like, I mean, that's massive. I mean, that's millions of people that you are exposing this potential event to. And I think the buy rates would be very good as well if done correctly. And I just think that creatively, everybody has to get on the same page. But we could be leading to that with all the cross promotion that we're seeing amongst the companies.
Ooh, man, I'm glad you broke that down. Man, I'm like, it's funny because I've been mentioning this on the show with Julio. Like, hey, there could be a legit supercard because I know with All Out? No, Double or Nothing in Las Vegas, they had 60,000 people online waiting for tickets.
Ooh.
And Matt and Nick Jackson are like, damn, we could have done a stadium show. Like, damn, like that's the man.
But see, that's relative in the sense of this. So when you have big numbers available, people don't have, and I know this just being in the industry, people don't have a sense of urgency because they're like, all right, well, there's 70,000 tickets available. I'll be okay. So you're not, going on your computer and you're trying to get tickets as soon as, the hardcores will. And those that want to be there, really bad will. But those that are on the fence are kind of like, Whereas if you make it, when you make it an exclusive event, 20,000, 30,000, something like that, there is an urgency that you have to have. If I'm going to go to this, I need to buy my tickets the day that they go on sale. Because otherwise I'm going to be out of luck and I don't want to pay, secondary prices. But the big thing with this whole concept, guys, is that all the power brokers have to come to the table and work together. And I think now more than ever, egos are being pushed to the side. I mean, egos will always be around in our business, but people are saying, what's better for the health of my company and his company too? Before it was like, I can eat, but you can't eat. Now it's like, no, like we can eat, so can you. You're doing what you're doing. We're in competition with each other, but if I help you out and you help me out, my number's going to go up, then your number's going to go up, my pay-per-view buys go up. It's just everybody wins. And bottom line is more dollars. And that means more longevity for the companies.
Yeah, it's good that one of these promoters owns a NFL team, NFL stadium. So that takes care of that problem. So Julio, go ahead.
Cool, man. Let's talk a little bit SummerSlam before we get into dream matches. So as we know, SummerSlam just announced Las Vegas, Nevada, Saturday, August 21st. What are your thoughts on this?
I mean, I'm kind of sad, guys, because I was thinking to myself, if they're going to do the 22nd, I was going to be in Las Vegas anyway. I'm like, all right, instead of doing, maybe I'll do a pool party during the day and then, head over
nice.
and enjoy SummerSlam on that Sunday. Now that it's happening the same day, I mean, look, they're going up against Pacquiao and Errol Spence. I mean, this might be the final time that we see Manny Pacquiao inside a boxing. And I know that it's its own audience, but I know, guys, so many friends of mine that are crossover fans. Like, my people that I know, I mean, just across the board, people that like boxing also enjoy pro wrestling, especially the big events like the Royal Rumble, WrestleMania, SummerSlam. We all watch it. I mean, I watch a lot of the big events and stuff. Do I watch every week? No, I'm not going to lie to you. But do I watch the big events? 100%. And now they're going up against Spence and Pacquiao. I mean, but again, there's a method to their madness. I'm sure it'll be successful. And Vegas is going to be wild that week. I mean, with Pacquiao and Spence and that one. But it's almost disappointing from my perspective, because now you're splitting combat sports fans in half. Yeah. You can choose one or the other. And what's the thing that you really need to see immediately? That's the fight, because you don't want to go back and I'll go back and watch wrestling if I miss it, whatever the case may be. I don't feel like I'm having, FOMO, fear of missing out. Whereas, with boxing, you can't do that, because if you miss that big shot, you're like, oh my God, I missed it. Yeah, you don't want to be that person,
Exactly.
Yeah,
I
totally agree.
The same thing, man, because I would rather miss a wrestling match than a big boxing match with Manny Pacquiao.
I mean, especially him being 42 years of age. I mean, just talk about him hanging up the gloves. He's fighting Errol Spence, who's undefeated, arguably the best welterweight in the world. I mean, man, like this guy's still testing himself against like a young, hungry champion in his prime. This is like superhuman that we're seeing when it comes to the kind of challenge that he wants. And then I'm like, oh man, it would have been such a great emotional high to go from Pacquiao Spence into SummerSlam. I think it would have done SummerSlam good, because people would be so hyped up from the fight and from the energy, and they're like, man, I can't wait for SummerSlam. It's going to be off the charts. I think it would have done a little bit better. Now you're going to split the audience.
Yeah, they could have brought in Pacquiao the next day.
I mean, honestly,
on SummerSlam. If he wins, you bring him in. Now you get the crossover pub, but you can't do that because you're on the same day and the same time, which makes it worse.
Yeah, in the same resort area too, because MGM Resorts. I mean, it's like, oh boy, who knows? I might be playing blackjack and have Roman Reigns sitting next to me, playing fight week and stuff. I like to play cards on my off time, so who knows if that were to happen? I mean, I'm sure an instance like that will occur over the course of my week in Vegas.
So I got one thing before we get into the dream matches.
Yeah.
Did you see the debut of Andrade in AEW yesterday?
I heard about it. I watched he put up, like, I don't know how long his promo went, but I saw what was online because I was flying, or I was out last night. And I mean, look, he looks great. He looks great. I like the fact he's learning so much from Ric Flair. Obviously, Charlotte being his fiance, right?
Yeah.
Aren't they like engaged? Okay, so like the guy's. I mean, he has all the makings of being just a superstar. He's got, the beautiful, fiance. He looks like $1 million. I mean, the guy's not an ounce of fat on him. His work rate's tremendous. If his mic skills continue to improve, this guy could be a massive superstar, guys.
Oh, yeah. And I love the fact they put Vicky Guerrero with him. Like, that just goes hand in hand. Like, gave me Eddie Guerrero vibes, kind of.
Well, it's like Eddie was... Like, Andrade takes it to kind of gives me a little bit of Ric Flair, like when it comes to the suits and the suits and stuff like that. Like, do that, but not to the degree that Andrade kind of takes it up to another notch from a GQ level. You know what I mean? Like, he brings that coolness, and you could tell. I mean, I wear a lot of suits, right? So I could tell he spends money on his suits and his stuff.
Definitely.
And it fits perfectly and stuff like that. Even like the details that he has. I mean, his look, his presentation, how he carries himself, the way that he walks to the ring, his aura. I'm like, man, this dude is money. Like, this guy, it's almost like
he's styling, profiling, man.
No, but who was it? The guy in World Class who passed away, Gino Hernandez.
Yes.
It's almost, he gives me very Gino Hernandez.
Ooh, that's a good one.
It is.
But the fact that his work rate is faster than Gino. So he gives me Gino Hernandez vibes with the way that Gino Hernandez was. I mean, the guy dated Farrah Fawcett. Are you kidding me? Like, that was back in his heyday. Like, what? Yeah. That's what Andrade, I think, is sort of emulating, but with a different work rate.
Something just dawned on me. We could possibly see with AEW, we could see a Latino version of the Four Horsemen.
I mean, look, I think it'd be interesting.
I'm cool with that.
I would love it.
Let's talk dream matches before we run out of time here. We do every episode before we get out of here. We talk about our dream matches. So, you want to go first? Should I go first this week, man?
Okay. You know what, Ray? We're gonna leave you last. Think of your dream. We're gonna give you time to think of your dream match. Julio, you can go on first.
Okay, cool. Now this one took me some time, but I definitely want to see this match eventually. So I'm going with my man Drew McIntyre versus AEW's Lance Archer.
I like that.
What you guys think? D?
I think it's excellent.
Yeah, that's a powerhouse, especially the way Drew McIntyre's improved his repertoire since he's returned to WWE, and Lance Archer, the improvements he made since being in New Japan and now he's AEW. that's just a slobber knocker. Like, man, that's a video game fight where you're just gonna see these guys just mashing everything.
Dope. Cool. Well, eventually, I hope we get to see that one day. But for now, I like what Drew McIntyre is doing. But let's get to yours, D. This one, actually, I like yours better, man.
Oh. Whoa.
Yes.
I like it. Ray, I had to put somebody from MLW since I had you on the show. Yeah. And this is one of my favorite wrestlers in MLW, besides Alex Hammerstein. Give me Nick Aldis and Jacob Fatu.
Can we see it? Can we see it?
Yes,
someday?
Ray.
I don't know. I mean, I'm not core power. I just kind of do what's in front of me. But man, I like that a lot. I mean, Aldis is that's another guy that's just a stud. I mean, when it comes to being a world champion and carrying the belt with class and having a great work ethic and just constantly busting your ass in that ring, night in, night out, just constantly delivering, being a constant. That's what Nick Aldis is all about. Yep. And Jacob Fatu, I mean, guys, I don't really get afraid of people per se, but that guy is a dangerous human being. I mean, the amount of physical pain that he can cause any human being on the planet is like next level, because he can physically, like his concussive power is, I mean, he's just vicious. But then he can also go and show his agility and give you a perfect moonsault. It's like, what can this guy not do? And he's 300 pounds. And he's 300 pounds of constant energy and power and explosiveness. This guy is the dude. I mean, man, oh man, is he unbelievable.
So, vibes here.
So, Ray, I am going to message you that flyer so you can pass it along to Court Bauer, or I may tweet it at him.
Yeah, tweet it at him.
Please put that match together, because that would be an interesting partnership, NWA and MLW, because you kind of have those great champions, and the middle card is like up and coming. Woo, that's good. I'm going to pitch that to him so you can call a Nick Aldis match.
You should, and I absolutely love it.
Cool. It's been a pleasure, man. Time's almost out here, but man, where can they reach you?
Oh, SBR Flores on social media, guys. So SBR Flores on my social media. Greatly appreciate you guys, bringing me on. Had a blast. Love talking pro wrestling and boxing, MMA, everything in combat sports. So you guys are doing an awesome job, especially you guys being from my hometown of Chicago. You guys are repping Chicago all over the world with your reach. I'm so proud of both of you guys for what you're doing and bringing the energy every single week. We talk about being constant. That's what you guys bring, consistency and entertainment and information to the audience on a weekly basis. You do not let up. You constantly bring it. So you guys are doing an awesome job, and it's a pleasure joining you tonight.
Man. Oh, thank you. That means so much. Man, thank you. We greatly appreciate it. And this won't be the only time you come back on. We're going to bring you back on again.
Yeah, I definitely want to be back and stuff, guys. We might have to tape, during the week because Saturday nights I'm busy, but this week with Mayweather Paul, it works out. So appreciate it, guys. You guys are amazing, and I love listening to the show. Even if I don't catch it live, you bet your ass I'm listening the next day or on Monday.
I appreciate it, man.
Thank you.
Keep killing the game, man.
Take care, guys.
You too, boss. Ray Flores. Man, great guy.
Yes,
great guy.
That was great.
It's Wrestling Talk with your man, Don Julio, my man, the Encyclopedia of Wrestling, D. Cologne. And our time is up here. And I want to thank everyone who tuned in today, for tuning into this episode. It's actually one of our, most interesting episodes because we covered a little bit of everything here, man.
Yes, we did. And off the record, well, I'm not going to say off the record. I'm going to talk to Julio afterwards. But a lot of you don't know what went behind this and how we accomplished this. But, man, thank you so much, Ray Flores, for giving those words of that means a tremendous amount, because a lot of you who watch this, you think we just come on Saturday and, oh, that's great. Julio, he has a job, family, a newborn. Yep. He's watching pro wrestling. I manage at least 15, 18 social media accounts. I'm watching at least 30 hours of wrestling on top of that, on top of, helping my dad and everything with his, recovery and everything. So this ain't easy. This ain't, oh, I feel like doing it. It's like, no, this isn't easy, but it's fun, and we do it for you guys. And man, this is really cool.
Passion. It's a passion. I hope we make you proud, KG. You know, as always, shouts out to KG. You know, he's watching down at us. But don't forget, join us next week for more wrestling talk, more entertainment, and I know there's going to be a lot. We may have another guest, and there might be a lot more breaking news in the wrestling industry come next week. So you guys don't want to miss
next week. After we get off here, there might be breaking news at 9 o'clock.
You're right about that. It's wrestling talk. Keep your ACs on. Keep cool. And join us next week. We are out. Peace.